Hi, and welcome to the first book review for 2026, which, as I promised myself it would be, it is for Weird Frequencies, Strange Stories by Stranger Authors, edited by J. Swick, with this beautiful cover done by Jim over News at the Gilding. And I should mention, because I don't think I have before, that all the typesetting and cover arrangement is done by Nick over at the Book Graveyard. So this much anticipated, incredibly lauded, very reflective, and this book is part of the zeitgeist that is currently our end of booktube, and I was so excited to get it. But when I got it, I promised myself that I was going to be conservative. I wasn't going to drink it all down until all the flavors mixed. So I kind of made my own challenge for this. I started it in the last 2 weeks of December. I wanted it to be the last book that I was reading in 2025, which is when I feel that our corner of BookTube really came together as a community. I was on already in 24, and I had friends. I've got friends that I've had on there on BookTube for a while, but 2025 was when it started to become this real loose association of weird people who read weird books. And I wanted to be reading it into the new year. I wanted it to be my last book of 25 and my first book of 26, which I have actually succeeded. So I completed a challenge. Yay. Now, because I was reading it later than many other people, I was trying to avoid the reviews of it. But I did get some reviews, and I did notice a live stream. One thing a lot of people were saying was, oh, I could totally tell who wrote insert story here. And I was thinking, well, could you? Could I? I'm the person who notoriously can't even tell who done it in an Agatha Christie. Would I be able to tell who wrote an individual story? So I devised this semi-unscientific way of trying to find out without confirmation bias. And only later did I realize that it might be a little bit insulting to the editor. So Jake, if I've insulted you, sorry, promise not to do this next time. When I was ready to read a story, the first story is on one of those live streams, while I was still trying to keep my hands off this book, I heard that Richard Rampole over from Vintage SF did a comic for it. I love comics. Absolutely do. So when I heard that, I couldn't resist. I ran right in. I read that comic, and I've now read it 2 or 3 times. A couple of these other stories I've already read twice as well. And I loved it. I loved it so much, and I got so into it. So it's called Bobby and the Spaceman, and it's these short, simplistic almost frames. And what we have is, first frame, we've got a man sitting on a park bench reading a book with his spaceman's helmet beside him on the bench. A small child walks onto the frame, looks at him and goes, oh, wait a minute. Goes off, gets their book, sits on the other end of the bench, and they both sit there reading their book. And after a while, the spaceman turns to the child and gives them a quote presumably from the book they're reading, which is a well-known author who you would remember if I could remember to tell you. And it's this philosophy on life and reading and the meaning of life. And it's really, really good. Carl Sagan. Of course we all know Carl Sagan. No, we don't chew glass. No chewing glass. And the child listens with interest and then returns another quote about reading from Dr. Seuss. Now, I thought this was magnificent. I thought this was the very essence of what my whole channel and my whole tagline is all about. Read good books. Dr. Seuss is a good book. You can get meaning from the universe from it. Carl Sagan was an amazing author. You can get so much from him as well. Any book that you happen to be reading in your own sphere for your own enjoyment is a good book because of what you can take out of it. It is especially a good book if what you can take out of it, you can present to someone else who is not reading that book, but who can get something from it. And the juxtaposition of Dr. Seuss and Carl Sagan was just fantastic. But more than that, do we want to fly? Say hello for the camera. Chirp, that'll do. More than that, it was about finding a community of readers, so it is very appropriate to Weird Frequencies. you've got this older guy who's reading, a young child comes along, and they sit there and they read together as a community without needing much more than that. Anyway, I got fully into this comic and its deeper meanings, many of its deeper meanings. And so I'm going down this deep dive of what this comic means, and I'm thinking about how I'll review it. And then I think, wait, I know Richard. Richard might even watch my video. I know he does sometimes. There's a lot of them, probably not always. What if he sees me talking about it and that's not what he meant at all? And he does a T.S. Eliot. That is not what I meant at all. That is not it at all. And that brought me to the whole notion of reading books written by people you know. And the whole notion of the fact that I do know many of the people in this book. It's like, how do you review a book whose author you know this well? What is the process? What does it do to your mental perspective of the story that you're reading? And that was partly how I evolved my method. 13 stories. Hold it on an angle where you can't really read anything. Wait till there's a blank page. Turn it over because the author's on the opposite page. And here you go. You've got a story, but you don't know who wrote it. And you can read it free of knowledge of who it is and try and guess. And you can review it in your head free of the commitment, the social ties that you have to that person or may have to that person. And that's how I read Weird Frequencies. So after the editor put in all that effort to arrange the stories in the right order, sorry Jake, I didn't do that. Next time. As I've mentioned, the very first one I read was Bobby and the Spaceman by Richard Rampell, and I've already mentioned how much I loved it. My careful scientific method then threw up for number 2 the 5th book in the 5th story in the book, which is The Next Cycle. And I've got to say, this one proved to me that I had no idea who were writing these. This one is by Ira over at SF Words of Wonder. I think Ira was the first friend I made on BookTube. And I'm reading this book. And we start with this alien creature on an alien world. And it's got these motivations to collect something. And we see that as a deep biological imperative. So it's not number 2. It's number 5. I just read it number 2. Where are we? The Next Cycle, page 87. So it's got these deep imperatives, and we live those imperatives with the animal. And right on the first page was the thing that I found most insightful about this story, where it says, intelligence can be a relative term, and while the prid could be considered intelligent, it lacked a complete understanding of its actions. That view on intelligence speaks into the whole nature versus nurture debate, and it hit right to my feels while I was reading it. Anyhow, we follow this prid, this animal, creature, intelligence, who knows, while it's collecting this mineral that it desperately needs to collect against a future season. We understand a lot about the world from it. And that should have told me that it was Ira, because Ira's got that engineering, strong science background, and the whole astronomy of this planet is tied into the story in a way that should have given it away, but it didn't to me. Then we have these humans come in, and the humans are not very nice humans, like many humans aren't, and they are motivated to get this mineral, which is incredibly valuable in Earth space, and I'm not going to tell you the end. It was a fantastic story. I've read that one twice. I have heard Ira say that he's not entirely satisfied with it. I guess I can see why. It's maybe a bit more... The writing may not be quite as smooth as some of the others, but it's far smoother than some of the others. So I really enjoyed it, and I hope that Ira does write more in the future. Okay. Roll of the dice then took me to story number 4. I promised that it was by accident. And this is Conjugation Junction by Chris. And this one I can't truly say that I didn't know who it was by, because I'd already watched a live stream with Chris talking about wanting to situate it in a liminal space. relevant to his channel, Liminal Spaces. And that an author he likes has already done the lift, so that didn't work for him, and put it in an aeroplane. And here we start with a character who's on an aeroplane going from Japan to Mexico. And the juxtaposition of the aeroplane and the Japanese background meant that I'm pretty sure I would have guessed Chris, but I didn't. So confirmation bias? Maybe. That was a great little story. It struck that weirdness, that edge of when you're on an aeroplane, and I love flying, I do it as often as I can, but that little world of the aeroplane is completely aside from the world of the airport you came from, the airport you're going from, and certainly outside to what is outside the aeroplane. So it's this very niche, pressurized, if you'll pardon the pun, circumstance, and you can often feel this feeling of being in a reality with a whole worldview that is different from anything else. And that comes through very much in this aeroplane when all of a sudden, beside our protagonist, appears a man that hadn't been there before, talking weird stuff that he doesn't understand. It is a great story. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, the flick of the dice then took me to the 11th story, Faster Than Life. This was a fantastic, scary, creepy science fiction. It was macabre, and there were unexpected twists and plots, and I enjoyed it. And I did wonder if it was by Nick. It wasn't. It was by the outlaw Levi Wallace, one of the people I know less well on BookTube, but might get to know them better over time. What else can I say about it? I really did like the pacing and the narration style, and I really think I probably need to read that one again before I can review it fully. Okay, moving on. There's a lot left to go. Roll of the dice then took me to my 5th read, which was story number 3, Mouth of the World. That was fantastic. And I will admit that on first starting the reading, I did for a second wonder if it was by Andreea, and that is our internal bias. The protagonist is a female. I know there's only one woman who's contributed to this. Maybe it's Andreea. Early on, I decided it probably wasn't. No idea who it was. We start with this woman who's in this poor village, and she's about to participate in this event that happens every few years. There's this huge gorge between her village and the other side. The other side is full of life and trees and vegetation. There's this beautiful shining city. On her side, there's this rocky, poor, impoverished village with people barely scratching a living, sick, hungry, in need. It's impossible to get across this gorge, and no one has ever come from the other side to them, but every now and then this moving structure will appear through it, and people will try to climb it and then go and make it across to the other side. No one has ever come back. But our protagonist has been meaning to do this for her whole life. And now she's a young woman. She has a partner. She has a child. But she's still going to do this thing. It is a fantastic and fantastical story. It is elements of the macabre. The ending is brutal in a great, great way. And the fact that I didn't pick up that it was by Bryan from Bad Taste Books when the whole thing is essentially about his channel's icon is embarrassing as hell. But here I am embarrassed. I enjoyed the experience of being embarrassed. No complaints. Roll of the dice then took me to my 6th reads, Runes of Bellor. This starts on a World War II train where our protagonist, who's a Debonair style cross between Leslie Carruthers' Saint and I guess Indiana Jones, and he's carrying something for his American government. Through this train he goes, the Germans are pursuing him. Because of this setting and because of this pursuit element, again, I wondered if it was Nick. And honestly, all the way through, great ending, by the way. I love the mystical icon, and it's no spoiler to say that there's arcane occult influence because it's called Runes of Bellor, and what else is that going to be? Thank you very much for that excellent story, Tim from Secret Fire Books. Okay, roll of the dice then took me to my 7th read, Darkness Shared, by Joseph Gilbert, from Joseph Fried's books. This was a fun little Texas returning from the war story. Again, I was wondering, is this Nick? I would not have picked it as Joseph's because I don't know Joseph as well as I could. Again, maybe that'll be corrected over the next year. There was a great element of suspense to this one. You've got a guy returning from the wars. He's seeking out the presumably sister. I'm not sure that sister is ever spelt out, and a couple of times I wondered if it wasn't, of his good friend from the wars who died. He's got something for her. We don't know what it is, but we understand from the get-go that it's going to be something it's a bit weird because, you know, it's all about the weird frequencies. There is a Texas bar, there are bar fights, there's a lot of really excellent characterization, and there is an ending which is surprise. I didn't see it coming. At that stage, I still kind of thought that Weird Frequencies was going to be mostly about science fiction, despite the Runes of Bellor, with a little bit of macabre, and here it's much more of a supernatural than a science fiction. But it was a really good story and it held together really well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The roll of the pages, which Reapy Cheap does not approve of, this time took me forward to my 8th read, All Things Unto Themselves. Now, I was trying to describe this to someone in the real world, but wait, aren't we in the real world? And I described it as if the movie Alien and the book Alice in Wonderland dropped acid together and went to an escape room for their first date. I don't really know what else to say about it. It is wild. It is crazy. I did not understand what was happening a lot of the time, but I was there for it. And a lot of it needed rereading just to be able to follow the narrative to keep going. I do have one criticism for this one, Virgil. At the start, unless I couldn't understand it properly, and it well might be on me, it seemed like the early narration was saying that the arm was ripped off, but then it was saying that there was an infected crater in the forearm, and I'm not sure if that's because I just wasn't getting the cadence of the writing properly. Anyway, there was, or whether the confiscation was meant to be intentional. Didn't quite get that. However, next time I see you, I'd love to talk about it. From that one, we went on to my 10th read. Am I up to number 10? No, that was number 8. Where's number 10? Ah, number 9. Okay, I knew who this was going to be because I knew that Jake had written the first story in the book, Beyond the Thick. This is a swampy alien mystery thriller, which I thoroughly enjoyed. On an alien world, we've got these primary intelligent creatures. I envisage them as kind of amphibian. They have got 3 fingers, and we start with the main protagonist, who is known as the Eyes of the Capital. This is a position where they investigate crimes, but they are also the person who dishes out the punishment. So they are investigator, judge, and executioner all in one. This swampy alien type environment was great. I kept thinking True Blood from HBO. The books were good. The HBO was better, at least for season 1. That was the kind of alien vibe I was getting from it. But the characterization was spectacular. The progression of the mystery was great. You got to see this incredibly elaborate structure of town and society and everything through very minimal light touches. That was very, very easy to read. It went from the page straight into my brain with very little intervention. That's a compliment. That's a good thing. I really enjoyed that story. I will reread that one for certain. And there's so much more to it. And there's a punchline that I'm not even going to talk about, even though most people who are watching this already know the punchline. So from there, I went to another one whose origins I didn't really know. It was the 7th story in the compendium. It's called Last Rites. And we're starting in this futuristic funeral home. It's almost entirely automated, with one human called Ben. And there's a lot of talk about data extraction. So yes, it's about cremating the body and everything, but part of the cremation and part of the funeral service is the fact that data is collected from this human. Internal data, physical data, but we gather mental data as well, because people who miss their loved ones have got the option of going to the funeral home, logging into something computer-like, and talking to their beloved for a fee. Now, about 3/4 in, I remembered Andreea talking about the fact that she had set hers in a funeral home, so I knew this was Andrea's from Infinite Text. It was a great, great story. It was creepy in a normalizing way, I guess I would say. It is normalized within the story, but for us, the reader, it becomes creepier and creepier. Now, I said there was one person in the funeral home. Actually, there's two. The second is a woman called Sybil, who doesn't really have a function there, but Ben has apparently the sway to keep her there, even on the occasions when she's wanted to leave. And her story arc is organically horrifying. Definitely a horror ending to this very science fiction overall story. I liked it. I could probably talk about any one of these stories on its own for one whole review, by the way. Maybe I will one day. We'll see. If I have a slow reading week, I will reread one of these and then just talk about it exclusively. From story number 7, which was my 10th read. Was it my 10th read? You know what? I've kind of lost track. Okay, my next read, I'm pretty sure, It Was on Deck 3. This was a fast-paced space opera type adventure. Our protagonist and his trusty sidekick, who is a 6-legged furry dog that smells bad, are coming into land on this planet. Part of their cargo run, maybe. And then bad things happen. There's a lady who's a hostage. There's gang war. There's cryogenic resurrection. There's a whole heap of stuff. Now, I will admit that early on I did, because of the action element, I was thinking, again, maybe this is Nick. But early on, I figured out it wasn't. This was too space opera. Now, I've heard, it was by Erik, by the way. I've heard a few people saying things about this book, and my takeaway was very different. So I don't know if Erik Wang was really intending it to be this way, and maybe I'm offending him terribly, who knows. To me, this seemed like an absolute tribute to Star Wars, because we've got the slightly outlawish guy on his spaceship, hi Han Solo, hi Millennium Falcon. He's got his furry, smelly sidekick, hello Wookiee. And we've got all this stuff happening. There's the girl tied up on the chair who calls him Flyboy at the end. I mean, is it just me? Tell me it's just me. But to me, that just seemed Star Wars, early 2 movies, not all the other stuff that's happened since. Absolute love letter to. Sorry, Erik, if that wasn't the intention, but that's certainly how it seemed to me. Okay, by now I only had 2 stories. I hope I haven't skipped any. That jumping around from place to place, that'll do it for you. I don't think I have. By now I only had 2 left to go, and I knew that Jim's was number 13, so I knew that I was finally reading Nick's story. I hope I haven't offended him here. La Fente I was the 8th story in this collection. It was the second last that I read. I like to think that I would have picked this as Nick's story, even if I was reading it sight unseen, but considering that I've picked virtually every other story as Nick's story, who knows? Anyway, this was a fantastic story. We start in a pawn shop, very new, Nick, and I think the style of the writing, which was very much adventure mystery with that slightly 50s vibe, I think I would have picked that up. I also think that Nick Anderson is probably one of the few people I know who can, with complete dignity and no, not laughing, insert a jeweler's loop into a story, which he did. So it starts in this pawn shop. A druggie is trying to palm off to the pawn shop owner this mysterious jewel. It's like a figure 8 and it's blue, but it's got moving parts of red inside it. And the pawn shop dealer is saying, what on earth am I going to do with it? Where did you get it? Where he got it was by getting it from a friend who has mysteriously vanished after stealing it from a museum. It's in a collection of items that have come from China. And when it vanishes, the museum has to notify the Chinese government, who send this super assassin mystic guy to hunt it down. So we've got some excellent fight scenes in this. I love a good fight scene, and this one did it beautifully. This was so... long silence, sorry. This was so many things that I used to love in the early books that I read, which were more mystery and action based, and it really gave me a taste for in 2026. I've got to read some more of those books. I know I have them around. I'll go back and reread some of them, maybe find a few of them more. So thank you very much, Nick, for a great story. Moving on to The Dig, which I saved for myself last night. I read it. And The Dig, of course, is by Wizard Jim from over at News at the Gilding, who also did this beautiful, beautiful painting. And great channel. Love following it. This was a spectacular story. It was so well written. And many of the other stories were well written as well. But this one had a smoothness and a thoughtfulness and a depth to it that meant the tiniest touches really struck home. And it might be that this is the most English story because, of course, Jim is from England or the United Kingdom. And I do tend to lean toward United Kingdom fiction. It might be that's why the narration style really struck home so much to me. But I loved it. It's wizardly, in fact. So we start with this guy, and he's miserable. He's coming home late at night, and he's hoping that his wife's already asleep. That way they can have a screaming match in the morning instead of when he's late. She's sure he's having an affair. He isn't. He just really doesn't like being at home because the house is creeping him out. He feels that there's a malignancy. He feels unpleasant there. And he comes home, and he wanders into the backyard, and he scratches the backyard with his foot, and all of a sudden he gets this dopamine euphoria sense, and he goes and gets a shovel and starts digging. And that's all I'm going to say about The Dig by Wizard Jim, because it is a fantastic story and everyone should read it. Probably everyone watching this has read it, because as far as we're concerned, this is the hottest thing to come out in 2025, and the storybook, novel, short story collection that we've all been looking forward to the most. So glad it came out. Thank you so much, Jake, for putting in all the effort, the enormous effort that must have gone into editing this miscellaneous collection. And to Nick for doing the covers. And to that guy, whose name I did read in the entry to the book, but who I was... Justin Bacolo from Fathom Press, who managed to turn it into a book that is our flavour of book. Most of us here really love the proper sized paperbacks, not the tombstone things that they're bringing out these days. This heft, this whooshiness of pages, this size of book that will fit on our purpose-made shelves. Thank you very much for all the effort that went into this. I love this book so much. I'm not even rating it. I'm going to give it all the star ratings, but that's beside it. And I'm going to finish with the introduction, which was also by Richard Rampol. Stars shine through the void. No one is from this moment, not even our sun. They herald a time gone by, inviting us into the void. Within each of us is a void, a desire for wonder and meaning. Stories shine like the stars. Travel into worlds within and without. Stories imagined by those who love stories. The common thread, they met on YouTube. Lovers of the weird, the liminal, the vintage, and even classic science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Venturing out into the digital void, they found they were not alone. Each has their own story. Each is a creator, not only of videos, but the words within. You have found your tribe. Come, join us by the fire as we tell stories. Richard Rampole wrote it, but we have all made it. Thank you so much to Jake for facilitating it. Have a great year of reading. Read lots of good books. And if you haven't already, read this good book. Bye.